Thank you so much for joining us. I have got Natalie with me today, and we're going to be talking about blockchain and Bitcoin and kind of some of the key components behind the technology. But before we get into the questions that I've got for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Sure. My name is Natalie Smolensky. I lead business development for Highland Innovation. Previously, I was the founding business development executive for a company called Learning Machine that spearheaded the first digital identity wallet using Bitcoin as a secure anchor of trust. So that company was acquired by Highland, and I have been within the acquiring entity helping to scale our blockchain business ever since.
Wonderful. And for those that don't know it, Navient and Highland are partners. So that's how I got connected with Natalie over the course of the last couple of months. So to get us started, I shared that we're going to be talking about the idea of blockchain, but I like to kind of have a level setting question to help everyone make sure we're on the same page. So can you share a little bit about the idea of what is blockchain and where you see strong use cases for the technology?
Sure. So a blockchain is basically a data structure that functions kind of like an append-only database in the sense that you make entries that are called transactions, and then those get sedimented in a historical chain of transactions that then is an auditable record or ledger of transacting. So initially, blockchains were actually called a time chain by Satoshi Nakamoto because of the sequential ordering of transactions and the fact that once transactions were anchored to a network, they could no longer be edited. The reason that this innovation is so important is not because shared databases are bad or inefficient for particular use cases, but because Satoshi was really trying to solve one problem, and that was how do you create digital money, natively digital money, not digital representations of money, like the money that's in your online bank account, but actual digital cash. So in effect, a bearer instrument that is digital in nature and that can't be reproduced. And this was a very difficult computer science problem. Before Bitcoin, it was very easy for anyone to replicate, a piece of digital money infinitely. Digital technologies reduce the costs of replication almost to zero. And so that obliterated the notion of scarcity, which is an essential component for money to have value. I mean, if anybody can make up however much money they have, then in effect, money is a worthless thing. And so what Bitcoin did is it implemented this critical criterion for usable money, which is scarcity. And it did so in an entirely digital format through the use of this shared ledger with time sequenced transacting that could not be edited in retrospect. And so that really created the conditions for decentralized money. In other words, a money that is not issued by a government or a nation state, but kind of bubbles up from below in adoption and is generated according to a software protocol that is open source and available for anyone to inspect. So it's really hard to overstate how important Bitcoin was for not just technology or the technology industry, but for human society more broadly, human civilization. And that's what the work that I do with the Texas Bitcoin Foundation strives to highlight. Is this precisely the value of decentralized digital cash as a peer-to-peer bearer instrument?
Thank you. I love the way you explain it. It makes so much more sense when you dive into to the details there. And so you mentioned in your introduction kind of this idea of maybe Bitcoin being used as a base layer in certain scenarios. And I think people can conceptualize how Bitcoin is a currency itself. But could you dive into that idea of how it can be used as a layer of trust?
Sure. So the only reason that Bitcoin is usable as money is because the ledger establishes consensus as to who owns how much Bitcoin, and how much Bitcoin there is in the world. And that consensus is not established by some authority who, keeps track of the ledger and alters the amount of Bitcoin that is in existence, which is what central banks currently do. They manage the ledger, they create and destroy money supply. In the Bitcoin protocol, all of that is transparent and open source. And so it's that protocol layer of trust, that there is consensus built into the network, not because, any politically powerful or connected actor declared it to be so, but because an open ledger that anybody can see and that's continuously updated, transparently shows that that is the case. And that is why, Bitcoin is called enemy money, in the sense that, you use it, your enemies use it. And the assumption is that it's an adversarial network. So the assumption is that people are trying to hack the network, that people are trying to falsify how much money they have. So all of these attack vectors are factored in, or were factored in by Satoshi in the genesis of the Bitcoin protocol, which, because you can't assume that anyone is a good actor, it has the most robust security mechanism possible for arriving at perfect consensus on the transacting layer. And so there's really very little dispute about the accuracy of the Bitcoin ledger. And so sometimes that's referred to as trustless, but really what it means is that you're trusting the protocol, you're trusting the math, and not a particular authority or set of humans who are interested and who may want to alter that ledger to their own benefit.
So there are lots and lots of different cryptocurrencies. I don't even know how many. If I were to try and count off the top of my head, maybe you know the answer to that quiz question. But how should people look at some of these other cryptocurrencies in relation to Bitcoin, and maybe how is Bitcoin different than what we would see with some of those other currencies that are available?
Well, Bitcoin, so Bitcoin was the first so-called cryptocurrency to gain wide adoption. There were other experiments in cryptocurrencies before Bitcoin, but it was the time chain innovation that really enabled the kind of mass adoption and scalability that we're seeing with the Bitcoin network today. And Bitcoin's success, and the fact that all of its code is open source, means that anyone can fork that code and create their own Bitcoin spinoff, which people have been doing for many, many years now. And so there are thousands of these other coins, some of which are literally just forks of, the Bitcoin code and haven't been maintained since a certain historical time point. Others have become their own projects with their own developer communities. And still others try to kind of take some of the innovations of the Bitcoin protocol and build their own protocols sort of from scratch, so that it's not forked code, it's some other type of protocol. All of these projects, I'm not going to pick winners or losers. I mean, there is a market, and they have the opportunity to demonstrate their utility just like any other software project. But the reality is that if you're talking about sound money as a use case, at this point, Bitcoin has pretty much won that use case from an adoption standpoint, from a power law standpoint, a market capitalization standpoint. The Bitcoin market cap is far higher than any other cryptocurrency, and that is because it is seen as such an effective store of value, medium exchange, in effect, digital money. And so a lot of these other projects, have basically just been fly-by-night attempts by people to get rich quickly off of scams, creating altcoins, pumping those coins, cashing out at the top, and then leaving thousands or millions of people holding worthless bags, coins that aren't worth very much at all. And so unfortunately, it's been a space that has not, or that has had quite a few bad actors try to sort of ride Bitcoin's success to their own personal self-enrichment. There are some other projects that have coins that, claim to be utility tokens. And so they claim that the coins associated with their network are in effect a type of local currency for that network, to transact, value on that network. That's a little bit more of a challenge as well, because these projects are often attempting to do things like run software programs and applications directly on chain, like at the layer of the blockchain itself, which candidly is not, the best, most efficient way to architect software. So, we've seen time and time again that these like on-chain contracts, have bugs in them, which, then can't be fixed because it's an immutable record, an immutable chain. And so people end up losing millions of dollars, or, having important data lost because they entrusted it to a chain that really wasn't designed for that purpose. And so from my point of view, I see Bitcoin as a dumb network. It's not, designed to be a full stack software application implementation. It's designed to transact value from point A to point B. And much like TCP/IP, which powers the internet, its only job is getting information from point A to point B. The value, the commercial value, is then all created at the application layer, and that is where we've seen the Web 2.0 revolution take place. It's at the www layer, not at the TCP/IP protocol layer. And so what we're seeing is the Bitcoin ecosystem is in fact building out this software stack with the advent of layer 2 and layer 3 protocols like Lightning Network, Ion, and others that are scaling the base chain by, in effect, linking transactions that happen off-chain to the chain as a base settlement layer. And so we're seeing, the next generation of value being created on top of the BTCLN protocol layer.
And you just dropped a couple of hints that I think are really great for me to pull out and point people to the Third Thursday conversation we had a couple of weeks ago, I think almost a month ago now, with Amy Peck, where we talked a little bit about how all of this blends together with that idea of Web3 and the metaverse, and kind of how all of these ideas are connected to one another. But I want to thank you for joining me today to talk through this. And anybody that is watching that isn't already, make sure you make your way over to Natalie's profile and follow her, as well as you're very active on Twitter with all of the Texas blockchain components and that type of thing. So make sure that you're following her and learning more about this emerging technology as it becomes available. And as always, reach out to either one of us with any questions. But thank you so much for joining me, Natalie, and have a wonderful day, everyone.
Thank you.
If you're looking for expert tips on how to get started with your transformation or looking to hone in on your approach, make sure that you subscribe to our channel to catch our weekly Digital Transformation Talk series, where we interview experts from around the world on how to make it happen.